You got Friday night lights, Saturdays full of college football, and Sundays full of disappointment for Colts fans. We'll get to that soon, but we'll start on Saturday. College football right here at the University of Indianapolis. Caden and Jake as we hop into last call. Greyhounds get a 41-34 win over Truman State. Really the biggest game all year for them. This is the one you have circled on the schedule, usually 1-2 in the conference. What we see from the Hounds?
Well, an absolute dominant first half is what we saw. 31 points in that first half, taking a 14-point lead into that half, and we saw an absolutely explosive offense. I mean, we talk about it every time we'll get into Sukup's stats, but you see those longs of 45, you see the longs of last week, it was 60, 70 yards, and I think that is really the key to this offense, though, that down-the-field threat. Not only does it open up for the run game, but as I've mentioned many of times, you can't pass the ball if you can't run the ball. You have to have a threat on the ground. You got to make the linebackers think. You got to make the safeties think. As soon as you get them to bite up, that's when you beat them over top, and vice versa. Whenever they drop back, you run the ball underneath. So there's ways to beat every defense, and Gavin Sukup is pretty much the best thing to have on your team to beat any defense, because not only can he pass the ball, he can get it done on his feet, and he's a threat on his feet. That's the thing is people had to worry about him when he's leaving the pocket. He can roll out and throw both sides, which you don't ever see from quarterbacks. He is dominant throwing left and right.
I mean, he has the ability to make throws that not many guys can, especially at this level. And those are the ones that you're going to see when you go back and look at the highlight tape. But they're all carved out through this guy right here, John Lewis, right behind me. He's carving out 5-6 yard runs just to set up these drives down the field. It's really just a freight train of an offense. You have an offensive line that is amazing. I mean, best friends with this guy, right? He runs through, doesn't matter, A gap, B gap, C gap, outside the edges, the wide receivers block. So when those linebackers start to creep in, that's when Gavin Sukup goes to work with a receiving core that I don't know if anybody matches that Division II football. We look at everybody's getting passes. Ethan Hand caught a touchdown pass. Anthony Crowell, he didn't even have a touchdown, but he had 5 catches for 105 yards, Jake. So many weapons on this team.
Absolutely, and Kobe Lewis, the spotlight player last week, not as much of an impact this game, but still 5 receptions, 75 yards. We see production coming from every player on that offense. It's not one star, one area to shine the light. It's this whole offense, the line, the receivers, the running back, and obviously that captain, the quarterback, Gavin Sukup. 24 for 34, 319, 2 touchdowns through the air. You mentioned one of those going to Ethan Hand, his big tight end. So I think this is a team that should dominate the rest of the season. We should see performances like this and like we saw last week pretty often. I'd imagine there'll be a team that's averaging about 42 to 48 points per game. They're putting up about 5-6 touchdowns right now, so I could see that easily moving through the rest of the season.
You had eight receivers that caught a pass. One of those, Marcus Gillum. He only caught 1 pass in like an offensive drive, but his effect comes on special teams. And that was something that Coach Keevers highlighted before the game, the pregame interview with WICR. Got to hit special teams. Truman State always has some of the best special teams in the country, and obviously the Great Lakes Valley Conference as well. Mm-hmm. And this comes to form in a kick return that they had, brought it all the way back to the house. Star back there. But then for the Greyhounds, Marcus Gillum on the other end, right back. You trade kick return touchdowns. You lost momentum, got it right back, and then obviously the Hounds can finish it off.
And you mentioned that word momentum. That's something that we see very present in a lot of these UINDY teams and pretty much everywhere on campus. I'll take a step aside to the volleyball team. Every game they bring the energy, no matter – that's the thing. You never know at the D2 level. There could be 20 fans on the stands. There could be 2,000 people in the stands. You never know how many people are going to show up, so you have to bring your own energy. And that's something, if you look down on that sideline, every player is excited. They're getting hyped for their teammates. They're high-five, running out, chest bumping. It's a very fun team to watch. And you get a close game like this against the second-best team in the conference at this point, and I don't think anybody else can compete with them. I see there's a good chance for an undefeated season, but we can't see what happened last year where you get too confident, that overconfidence, and you end up forgetting about the latter part of that schedule.
You know, I talked to Coach Keevers last year, and before I tell you this story, Coach Keevers is not a superstitious guy. He says they work too hard to be superstitious, but I walk into his office. I say, hey, Coach, you win this game against McKendree, and it looks like you have a really good chance to host an NCAA playoff game right here at Key. He stops me and says, I'm sorry to do this. We can't talk like that. We can't talk like that. And, of course, we all know as Greyhound fans that they would go on to lose on senior day to McKendree and then go on the road to play Pittsburgh State. That's well in the memory of Coach Keevers and this entire UINDY football team. You expect that same hunger week in, week out, both offense and defense. Next week, Wayne State, what are we looking for from UINDY?
Definitely that big offense, but I think at an away game, the defense is a lot more important. Staying disciplined on defense, not giving up big plays, and that's something that this UINDY team has been good at, but as you mentioned, that kick return, special teams, it's little details, and had they not followed that up with another kick return, we could have seen a completely different ending to that game. So coming in to Wayne State, I think they're going to look to punch them in the mouth, come out quick offensively, as they have here. We're seeing at this point they're a first half team. They're putting up a lot of points offensively and then holding them in the second half defensively. So I expect to see that explosive offense attacking. Another high scoring game, could be looking 40 to 20s.
UINDY football continues to succeed. We'll stick with college football with IU and Notre Dame when we come back on Last Call.
So the overall mission here at Flanner House Indy is to help with the development and growth, the self-efficiency and self-sufficiency of the near northwest side of Indianapolis. When the Double Eights closed in the area, that left the near northwest side a food desert. So Brandon Cosby, the executive director of Flanner House, started with the Flanner House Farms, where they grow fresh produce organically for the neighborhood around. And then later on down the line, Cleo's came about. So we're here to help with the sustainability of getting fresh food at cheap prices to the locals around. Black owned, black ran. That's the gist of Cleo's for the most part.
We mentioned it at the beginning of the show. Saturday's full of college football. We got our UINDY fix. Now we'll move down to Bloomington. We'll actually move across the country to the Rose Bowl. Go to Southern California for UCLA. This was the first real test, I feel like, for the Hoosiers, and they pulled it out 42-13. And last week, well, you know it, Jake, I wasn't super high on the Hoosiers at all. I was not a huge proponent of what they had going on, but, well, they came out and shut me up.
And, I mean, I hate to say I told you so, but
okay.
I did tell you so. A very big game. They were up by 21 going into the half. I think maybe 40 seconds before the half, UCLA did slip into the end zone. So heading into the half with a 14-point lead, they would only give up a field goal on that first drive of the second half, and that is all the points that UCLA scored. So offensively, very, very good. Rourke, he might be that guy. I mean, watching just a little bit of what I did get to watch, 307 yards, 4 touchdowns. I don't think we've seen that from an IU quarterback since Michael Penix was there. And if you take a look at the receiving core, Miles Cross, the leader this week, 6 receptions, 90 yards, 1 touchdown. That 6 receptions lets you know that he's going to multiple targets. Mm-hmm. So this is a very versatile offense, and we've seen what they can do against the Big Ten now. We'll see if they can keep carrying that on through the rest of their schedule.
UCLA probably on the bottom tier of the Big Ten, but they do have some big names coming up, and we'll get to those later. The thing about Rourke that really stood out to me is this guy's patience. Never, ever looked like he was in a rush. It could be 5, 6 on the blitz. He's standing tall in the pocket, has a great arm, and he makes good decisions. Over the middle of the field, I mean, he's not leaving his receivers high and dry. And like I said, I mean, his timeliness is just there as a quarterback. He has that it factor. He has a knack for getting the ball exactly where it needs to be when it needs to be there. And I think he definitely gained a fan. here against UCLA.
You mentioned that poise, and that was something that you talked about last week, was the issue with traveling 10 hours plus to go to the Rose Bowl and play. And I saw a lot of composure from this team. It looked like it might as well have been a home game for them. They were settled in.
It almost sounded like a home game.
Yeah, I mean, IU is on the up right now, and unfortunately for them, no competition, or I guess lucky for them, no competition this week. They'll be facing Charlotte, so could see another big blowout. I would be expecting it at this point, but how impressive has Rourke been these past couple of weeks? I mean, we've seen really all of it this weekend, but
it's great stuff. It's great stuff as we look in. You mentioned Charlotte. Then they're going to have Maryland and Northwestern. And then, I know we say the first big test was UCLA. You're going to play a ranked right now 22nd Nebraska. And I think that is the game that will really decide if they step into that next level. That next level for me is having the number sign and anything under 25 next to IU. Is that a possibility?
I think it's definitely a possibility. They're sitting right outside that top 25 right now. A win this week could do that for them. A couple of losses, Nebraska and Iowa, both I think 22-19 playing each other, 15-7 in Oklahoma and Tennessee. So definitely going to be some movements this week in the rankings, and that might be the perfect opportunity for IU to slip in.
So IU, they're in the 30s right now in the national poll, and after this win, they'll play Charlotte again. We'll move to Notre Dame now, who we don't have to say is coming off an embarrassing week, but they regroup against Purdue. They get it done in handsome fashion, 66-7. Is this enough to get your season back on track?
Me personally, I wasn't impressed. If you look at the stat line, Riley Leonard, 11 for 16, 112 yards. How do you score 66 points and not have a single passing touchdown?
Yeah, you're right where I'm at, because we're going to look around the nation, and frankly, you're not going to see a team succeed with a quarterback that has not thrown a touchdown through 3 games this season. He's had 3 games, has not thrown a single touchdown, and he's great on the run. Yeah, but one-trick ponies get exposed at the national level.
Exactly. That is my big worry. How are you going to expect to have 7 rushing touchdowns against a defense like USC or any other quality defense?
Yeah.
I mean, they're going to have to play Louisville. Louisville is a very sound team at this point in the year. They're ranked 19th. That's in 2 weeks, I believe. Is Notre Dame ready for that? I don't know. We'll see. Riley Leonard has definitely not shown it. 3 rushing touchdowns, very cool, but it's against a very bad defense. If you watched any of that game, you will see Purdue miss more tackles than the Bengals did last week against the Patriots. It was an embarrassing showing for Purdue, but, I mean, there is some upside for Notre Dame fans. You see a little bit better defensive play. Yep. But in my opinion, defense still carried, offense lagging vastly far behind, especially if they want to try and make it to this playoff. No way they can perform like that.
Well, Notre Dame currently 17th in the nation, looking to improve next week. We're going to stick with football, the Colts, and then touch on the Fever up next on Last Call.
Are you feeling alone in your faith? UINDY Catholic gives you an opportunity to get involved in a religious community on campus, providing sacramental needs and fellowship for prospective students and giving you a sense of belonging.
We just want you guys to know that God loves you, He delights in you, and He's in awe of you, and we would love to meet you. So you should come on out.
UINDY Catholic, a community for you.
For children who may have high-functioning autism, may have ADHD, processing challenges, working memory issues, sensory integration issues, those types of challenges. It's a place where human beings are valued, children are respected. It's a progressive school that takes a hands-on approach to education.
Well, we got some good news and bad news. We'll start with the good news in favor of the Fever. Looks like they're set to go into the playoffs after their last regular season game against the Mystics. And we don't want to say that it's not important at all, but the playoff picture pretty much set. Fever slated in at the 6th spot with the Connecticut Sun at the 3. That's going to be your first-round matchup, and the Fever are hot at the right time, Jake.
Absolutely, and I got a chance to watch 2 games this weekend, and I saw a lot of stuff that I like. But one thing I do want to hit on, and I did touch a little bit last week on it, is how much they struggle on offense when Caitlin Clark is not in the game. One thing that I saw the Aces do very well is doubling. They would double Kelsey Mitchell or double Aaliyah Boston in the paint. I think I watched Aaliyah Boston turn it over 3 times in the last 3 minutes of the second quarter against the Aces, and that's something you can't have. Obviously, turnovers are not good, but when Caitlin Clark's not in the game, they have no facilitator. Kelsey Mitchell can score the ball, and that's about it. We look at this stat line, 30 points, 1 assist, no rebounds. That's not winning you championships right there.
Caitlin Clark, she's great. She's amazing. She breaks the rookie scoring record with 761 points this season. It does raise the question that you were asking, how does the team respond when she's out of the game? Well, I'd almost be surprised to see her go to the bench for more than 5 minutes for any game this postseason. But we have to give credit where credit is due. What a prospect, and what a rookie year. To live up to the hype like this, it's amazing.
And absolutely, but one other thing I would like to hit on, not to be negative, Nancy, but
that's all right.
Caitlin Clark has had a problem with fouling. This is something we saw a lot in the national championship against South Carolina. We saw her get into foul trouble pretty much every game during that college finals. That was something we haven't seen during the regular season, but these past couple of games, she's been racking up the fouls. We saw that technical, her 6th of the year. Not that that's really anything big, but you can't be fouling out. You can't have 2 fouls in the first quarter and expect to play good basketball. You're going to have to sit for 6-7 minutes. That gets you cold. Then you got to warm back up. Then you go in for halftime. Then you got to come back out and get warm again. It's just not the best formula, especially for someone like her who shoots on streaks. She gets on a streak and gets 8, 10, I think, 11 in the last 5 minutes of that game last night. So she scores in streaks, and when you throw yourself out of your game by getting fouls, getting upset, different things like that, it can take you out of the game. And that's something that is big in the playoffs. You got to be mentally present at all times.
A career high 35 last night for against the Wings, and a great game. They won 110-109. But adding to your point, I mean, the energy expenditure on offense for her, I'd love to see her usage rate, the percentage, right? I mean, it has to be upwards of 65% on this team. Nobody else controls the ball, and I don't think anybody else should control the ball.
Not.
She's the distributor. She's your number 1 option on offense. Kelsey Mitchell, not far behind, is second. She also had 30. But as we take a look here, I mean, just look at how active she is on offense. And then you have to go and play the other side on defense, which I think teams are probably going to start to take advantage of, right? You mentioned fouls. You're looking at this matchup. You're going at Caitlin Clark on the defensive end.
And that's another thing is when you're getting attacked on defense, that's more energy there. And I would like to compare Caitlin Clark right now to 2016 James Harden on the Rockets.
Okay.
Playing offense but no defense. And obviously, when you have 2 fouls, you're going to have to be cautious. You don't want to get that 3rd foul in the second quarter. But I watched her just allow Kelsey Mitchell to drive right past, or sorry, not Kelsey Mitchell, Kelsey Plum drive right past her. And, I mean, she had a couple wide open threes in that one. The defense has to be there. Get your offense from your defense. And that's something that I think over the years, being in the league, that's just an experience thing. You learn the difference between playing good defense when you need to and playing good defense all the time. And I think that if Caitlin Clark gets to the level where she's able to play solid defense for at least 3 quarters, I think that we see a team here competing for a national championship in a while.
I think it's important to note that the standards that we hold her up to are the same standards that we hold Brittany Griner, Breanna Stewart, Asia Wilson, Kelsey Plum, and this is her first year. Big things to come for Miss Caitlin Clark. As we move to the bad news now in Indianapolis, you'll notice this red button on our desk. It has panic button on it. We're going to talk about the Indianapolis Colts coming off of, I'll say, a horrific performance in Green Bay. Obviously a tough place to play, but final score 16-10 against Green Bay. First thoughts, Jake?
Just a really bad overall performance. And I mean, you did mention that. It's just, I don't think you could pick one thing on this Colts team to be a bright spot. And that's pretty hard to do in the NFL, to not have a single bright spot in your whole team. And we'll take a look at the stats right here behind us. 204 yards and a touchdown for Richardson. Not horrible, especially compared to last week. I mean, last week was probably one of the best.
We're trying to be as positive as we can, right? But you look at the numbers, they tell the story. This is a young quarterback who's only going to get better, and he has to play these games, has to go through these tough stretches. But at the same time, what position are we putting him in? I mean, I'll go ahead and hit it right now. Let's keep hitting the button. You can even hit it, Jake. Come on.
We'll give it a couple taps.
Hit it. Look, 12 carries for Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor is the best player on this football team by a mile. Jonathan Taylor, accompanied with the offensive line, are the one threats that Indianapolis can truly say that they have on a week-to-week basis. He touched the ball 12 times. 12 times. That just shouldn't happen. John Lewis, 26 carries. And we look at probably the Colts' best drive. You get down to the red zone, first play of the fourth quarter, and it's 3rd and 1. After Jonathan Taylor probably picked up, 40 yards on this drive. You start out the fourth quarter, 3rd and 1. He's on the sideline. This would put you within one score, even with a field goal. And my Colts fans are going to remember this now. 3rd and 1, an option play. You dish it off to the running back. A 4 or 5 yard loss. Matt Gay has to take a 50-plus yard field goal. He shanks it. And, hey, Colts lose.
All right, so clearly Caden pushing the panic button over here, but we will go ahead and highlight probably the worst stat of the night. 3 interceptions from Anthony Richardson, and that's just kind of a trend that we see from Colts quarterbacks, I feel like. I feel like the interception game since Andrew Luck, I feel like it's just every Colts quarterback has been an interception magnet. But we'll look at the bright side. We'll do some positive here. Malik Willis, who everyone said was going to be the worst player to play football this year. His QBR rating would have been better if he had spiked it every time. That is no more. 12 for 14, 122 yards, 1 touchdown. He made the Colts look goofy. Yeah,
the Colts made Malik Willis look like an all-pro quarterback. The guy had 2 incompletions all day, and this was his 4th NFL start. He had his first NFL touchdown pass thrown against the Colts. And that'll tell you something. I mean, I look at Coach Steichen. I hope Coach Steichen plays Madden. I hope he plays against me, because that guy can't drop a play for nothing. I'm wondering what happened between Philadelphia and Indianapolis.
Well, we will mention probably, in my opinion, the deciding factor of this game. Josh Jacobs, 32 carries. Jonathan Taylor, 12 carries. That is the only stat that you need to know at this point. Josh Jacobs touched the ball 32 times.
Jonathan Taylor touched it 12.
Yeah, I mean,
12.
If you're a Colts fan, you know how bad that is for a Colts team. Only 12, or in total 18 rushes, and that's counting Anthony Richardson.
We're talking about a guy at his best is probably a top 3 running back in the league, touches the ball 12 times behind a top 5 offensive line. And Anthony Richardson is throwing over 30 passes. Why? He's not Peyton Manning. And there's nothing wrong with, not being all-pro ready in just your second season of NFL football.
He has played 27 games, not high school. So throughout college and his first year and now.
I don't even know if it's that much. I mean,
it is there's a clear lack of experience there for Richardson, and 17 for 34. I would stick to duct tape that to my door to never forget how bad I was that day. I would never want to be myself on that day, but maybe next week.
Maybe next week is right. Only one way to go, and that is up against the Chicago Bears. We might not even need this next week. But if we lose to the Bears, there might be 5 of them sitting on the table. We'll wait until then, see how it goes. Pray for Anthony Richardson. For Jonathan Taylor, maybe he'll actually touch the ball. And we will come back with a couple picks for the NFL this week.
Are you riding? Say you never ever leave from beside me. Duh.
There's often a moment when you're helping somebody with math where they just suddenly get over that little barrier and they get it. It's a nice aha moment, and I really like being involved in helping students achieve that moment, and we do get a lot of those here in the tutoring lab.
We're back. For the first time this year, we get to go through the primetime pick. And you might remember me and Graham last year going back and forth. I got whooped. I won't lie to anybody. Graham Shear did really whoop my behind in that scenario, but we're back.
I got big shoes.
I got experience. I got experience here, Jake, on you. So we start the first matchup, Eagles and the Falcons. Battle the Birds now. So as we start here, I feel like this one's pretty self-explanatory. I don't think anyone's really on the side of the Falcons in this scenario. Eagles are star-studded with Super Bowl experience. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, easy pick in my opinion for Monday. Philadelphia looking like a championship contender once again. After week one, we saw the offense with Saquon Barkley. Looks phenomenal. I mean, him coming out of the backfield along with Devontae Smith. And, I mean, they just have an all-around phenomenal team. And not to sit here and harp on them all day, but this Packers team is very talented. Jalen Hurts has a chance to win an MVP this year, especially with Saquon in the backfield. We talk about creating the pass through the run. That's exactly what they do. You get scared that Saquon's going to run for 200 yards on you, then Jalen Hurts throws for 300, vice versa. And I think that this Falcons team is going to have no answers offensively or defensively. And I see a very, very big loss for the Falcons.
For the Falcons, I feel like we always talk about the weapons that are going to get better, and then they just never do. I mean, Bijan, I love Bijan. I love Kyle Pitts sometimes. And even Kirk Cousins is a good watch. He's been a good, sometimes even great quarterback at stints in his career. But the Falcons are just consistently underwhelming against an Eagles team that constantly overachieves. So I feel like this one was a pretty easy decision. We'll move into a little bit closer of one now. Our next matchup, Jets and Pats. And I think we might differ.
I think we might differ as well because I got a chance to watch this Pats team live. And Jacoby Brissett, I mean, maybe it was just how bad the Bengals defense was. Maybe. But, I mean, they made him look like Lamar Jackson. He got out of the pocket. I don't think he got sacked once. He escaped every tackle for loss. I think he ran for probably 50 yards on us just in the middle of the field. He was taking them from 20 to 20. Obviously, they weren't able to finish it most of the time. But I do think that the place that they're going to struggle is the deep threat. Aaron Rodgers can find pretty much any hole in any defense. And even Bill Belichick has said it. It's almost impossible to start Aaron Rodgers. You could probably count on one hand how many games there's been a defensive scheme that actually stumped him. But I hate to bet against the Jets, but 7 primetime games last year, about a 500 record. So I think I'm going to take my odds. I'm going to go with the Pats, my first upset pick of the year.
I'll say it's definitely an upset, and Sam Gailey behind the camera, a known Pats fan, he's waving his arms. I'm sorry, I'm not there with you. I'm not there with you. Aaron Rodgers and the Jets are definitely going to pull this one out. We look to last week where the Patriots, they lost in overtime, 23-20 to the Seahawks, where they let Geno Smith throw for 327 yards. And now they go play Aaron Rodgers, and it's going to get any better in New York? I don't think so.
Where's this Geno Smith hate coming from? Geno Smith is that guy. I mean, he's vastly improved from what he was, and I personally think that could be one of the premier players this year. But more to come on the NFL next week.
We'll be back.